Today we're going to go over 4 ways to speed up your DAW and your computer in general. Alright, so the first way you can speed up your DAW is simply with some of these. Extra hard drives. So the reason this helps speed up your DAW is because your computer can read and write to your hard drive that's in your computer, but it can only do one or the other. It can't read and write simultaneously. Now your computer's always going to be spending a lot of time tying up your main hard drive, so if you're running a larger session and you start getting into issues where you're having disk too slow errors popping up and grinding everything to a halt, this would be why, because your computer can only read and write to one hard drive so fast. And all the other system processes going on in your computer are also going to bog this down. Why running your sessions off of a separate hard drive will help speed your system up. And I'll give you a real life example. This is something I've known about for years, but I never bothered with it. But a couple years ago I was scoring a small independent film and the sessions were getting so large, there were so many software instruments running, it was literally killing my computer. My computer was basically like, I straight hate you. I mean, I could barely even play the session back whatsoever. You get a couple of seconds in and I was getting disk too slow errors, my CPUs were crapping right out. So I thought, okay, to hell with this, let's just give this a go. Saved the session, quit out of Logic, and I took the session, I dumped it onto an external hard drive, reopened the session back, tried to play it, and boom! No more slow disk errors, no more CPU problems. Played back everything just fine. It was like suddenly I had a brand new machine that was twice as fast. So that's why external hard drives are awesome. And if you're someone who uses a ton of sample libraries, I would recommend getting 2 additional hard drives. One hard drive strictly to keep all of your sessions on, and the second hard drive to keep all of the bajillion gigabytes of samples that you'll have. That way each hard drive has its own dedicated purpose and it'll help keep your machine running a lot quicker. And a couple bonus tips for you if you are going to go out and shop for some new hard drives. First one is either buy SSD drives because they're super fast, and if you're going to go with a mechanical hard drive, make sure it is at least 7200 RPM. You can get 5400 RPM hard drives, they're a little bit cheaper, but they're too slow to do audio work, so don't even waste your money. Also make sure that they're USB 3 and not USB 2. When it comes to transmitting data back and forth, USB 3 will blow the doors off of USB 2 when it comes to speed, so always make sure it's USB 3. Now let's hit up method number 2. Method number 2 is more RAM. So how does more RAM speed up your system? I'll tell you. Okay, so the way RAM works is this. Your computer can read and write to RAM far faster than it can read and write to a hard drive. So anytime you open up a session or any application on your computer, it loads all of that data into RAM and then reads all the information from there. So when you open up your session, all the audio tracks, all the software library instruments, their samples, they're all going to load into RAM, which is going to cause the session to run really fast. But if you don't have enough RAM, what happens is your RAM gets filled up, and now there'll be all these other audio tracks or samples that it's trying to stream simultaneously from the hard drive, and this is what will cause your session to start slowing down and start giving you issues. So the more RAM you have in your system, the more data your computer can load into RAM, thereby making your sessions run a lot better. Now I have 24 gig of RAM in my iMac. I have never had an issue where I've run out of RAM. But in this day and age, I would recommend 16 gig as a bare minimum to get you started. And if you're going to upgrade your RAM, make sure that it's compatible with your computer, especially for Macs. Macs can be really picky with RAM, so if you aren't sure exactly what to buy, just head down to your local computer shop. They should be able to help you out, no problem. Now, the third method to help speed up your computer is to freeze your tracks. Now, if you have a session with a pudload of plugins, or you're using a ton of sample libraries, that is eventually going to start taxing your system. Now, how to freeze a track might vary from DAW to DAW, but in Logic, you're going to look for a little snowflake icon. And if you click that button, it's going to light up, it's going to look like nothing happens, but then hit the space bar on your keyboard, and it's going to go through and it's going to look like it's bouncing down the audio. And what it's actually doing is it's making a temporary audio file. So when you go to play back the session, instead of trying to process all of this data simultaneously, it's just going to read back the temporary audio file, because it's far easier for a computer just to play an audio file than to sit there and try and process all this stuff. So that's another easy way to help speed up your DAW. And now let's dive into method number 4. So method number 4 is simply adjusting your I/O buffer setting. Now when you're still in the tracking stage, you want to keep your I/O buffer as low as possible. When I'm recording, I keep mine set at 128 samples. That way if I'm trying to track a guitar, there's almost zero latency. It's so little that you can't notice it or feel it when you're playing. But having the buffer set to 128 samples or even as low as 64 samples puts a lot of strain on your CPU because it's trying to do a lot of heavy processing in real time essentially. Which is good because you don't want to play a guitar chord and then hear it back through your speakers like a half second or a second later, because you're just not going to be able to play. It's going to throw you right off. But once you're done all the tracking, you don't need to have your buffer set at 128 or 64. Crank it up. Boost it up to 512 or 1000, I think it's 24 or something like that. Just crank it right up. You're not doing any live tracking anymore, so there's no need to have your buffer set low. And that'll take a ton of strain off your computer, off your CPU, and let your sessions run a lot smoother and faster.